which is going to create, for a migration watch, they say, 15 new Birminghams. Now, I don't want to be unkind to Birmingham. We're going to talk to immigration lawyer Ivon Sampson here. But a good friend of mine who's from Birmingham actually said it, so I'm allowed to say it. He said 15 new Birminghams. I'm not sure we should even have the one we've got. But Ivon, welcome to the show. Thanks for talking to us. I mean, this is a huge problem that the government is creating, a rod for its own back, because regardless of your view of human rights or your view of immigration and how much immigration is required for an economy, to go up to these kinds of numbers is simply going to make Britain a very, very difficult place to live in, isn't it?
Well, you're assuming that the figures and the report by Mike Jones is accurate. I would argue that it's not accurate. Actually, it's quite misleading.
Okay. Well, why?
First of all, net migration assumes what it counts as anyone coming to the UK for more than 12 months. And that includes students. We have to remember, of those 600,000, 300,000 are students, of which 95% will leave when they finish their course. So
well,
the other point is that
the 600,000...
I beg your pardon?
Well, that may or may not be the case. I was saying the Home Office have already identified... the Home Office have identified 2 countries from which students have been coming, where they're now no longer allowed to apply for student visas because they're coming here and they're not leaving, they're staying. Well,
that's just your view. I'm talking about
no, those are Home Office figures, Ivon.
Yeah, 95% of students leave at the end of their course. That's a fact. The other point to note is that the 600,000 is an unusually high spike caused by the Ukraine war, the Home to Ukraine scheme. Also, we had the Hong Kong B&O settlement scheme, and we had an increase in students because of the pandemic where they weren't coming. So it doubled up in that year. A more reliable study, Mike, with due respect to Dr. Mike Jones, is the Office of National Statistics, and also Migration Observatory, which is part of Oxford University. And what they're saying is that by 2025 and 26, net migration will be down to the normal figure of about 250,000. So if you take the 600,000,
that's their prediction, isn't it? That is also. But hang on, Ivon, that's not. Ivon, hang on. Hang on a second. Hang on a sec. Yeah, but you're making an extrapolation as well. So your figures are just as inaccurate as Mike Jones's, because they're saying that will happen, but we don't know that will happen, do we?
No, remember the 600,000 is because of the Ukraine war and because of B&O. That's not going to happen in 2025. We know that. We also
we don't know
that
what's going to happen in 2025.
That's Ukrainians are going to come over to the UK. We know that as well. We also know that the normal figures of students going to come over. We know that as well.
No,
so
we don't.
It's actually quite an accurate figure.
No, Ivon, I'm sorry. You can't look into the future. You might be a very good lawyer, but you don't have a crystal ball. And what I'm saying is that every single trend, looking around the world, look at the United States of America, look at Western Europe, people are moving around the world at higher numbers than they've ever moved, right? So even if you take away the Ukraine number, even if you take away the Hong Kong number, there is no doubt in my mind and many people's minds that immigration and travelling from one country, one continent to another, particularly into Western Europe, is going to increase, not decrease, over the coming 10 years. And I think if you don't think that's going to happen, you just don't want to admit it.
I think your mind's confused, Mike.
Do you?
Look, let me explain to you this, that this country's, we have an aging population. By 2043, we're going to have twice as many people over the age of 85. And you have to remember, those who actually live here end up living, settling, becoming British. I hope you think that I'm British, but once they become British...
Well, I'm sure you are British. Why would I not think you were British?
They'll be contributing to the economy of this country. And they're the working population, that it increases the working population, which pays for our elderly and for their care. So instead of demonizing migrants, we should be actually thanking them because they're contributing to our economy.
Oh, right. Well, I'm not demonising. No, Ivon, I think you're the one, Ivon. Hang on, Ivon, I think you're the one that's got a confused brain. I'm not demonising migrants. I'm just saying that there are numbers of people living in this country, in parts of this country, which are already very overcrowded. And if they're going to get ever more overcrowded, then I think that's going to be a problem. And I think if you don't see that, you can't just continually say we need more people to pay for the elderly, because an awful lot of people who come to this country also bring their elderly relatives with them. So they're paying for their own elderly in addition to the elderly that are already here. So, you know, it's not a very, it's not a cut and dried situation.
There is no such scheme for bringing elderly parents. I don't know where you got that facts from.
Oh, so you're
It's
telling
just
me there are
simply
no
not true.
families living here multi-generationally who have brought their parents with them?
Last year, about 20 people succeeded in bringing their elderly parents.
20.
Okay, so it's simply not true what you're saying.
Well, I mean,
You
I
need to
see
get your
people with
facts
elderly
right.
parents all the time in this country. I think you must be seeing a different street scene than I'm seeing. You must be giving yourself, you know, you must be driving around, you know, you must be driving around areas that I don't drive around. Rafe, tell me that Ivon is now a soothsayer and a seer because he's got a crystal ball. He knows exactly what's going to happen in the coming years. Well, I think he's wrong.
The most remarkable thing here was to hear him say that 250,000 immigration level is normal. It's not normal. Right. 250,000 is outrageously high, all right? It's even higher now with 600,000. But remember, the manifesto pledges we had from Cameron and from May were to get things down to the tens of thousands.
Yes.
The normal level of
the
normal level of immigration that we had in the 90s before we had mass immigration under Tony Blair starting is 50,000. As you know, I said so many times, we've had more immigration in 25 years than in the last 2,000 years combined.
Yes.
Of the 10 million foreign-born residents in this country living here today, 42% came within the last decade. We've had more immigration last year than in the entire 1990s put together. And the idea that this is somehow normal and that we can absorb all of this is for the birds.
Yeah, Ivon, I'll give you the last word. 15 new Birminghams, you say isn't going to happen. Maybe 2 new Birminghams then. Still too many, isn't it?
No, look, let me give you the ONS figures. These are official figures, not a right-wing organisation.
I don't know why you're so prejudiced against the right wing.
These are official figures too. I don't know what you're talking about.
These are also official figures.
Let me give you some independent figures. ONS figures, 2043, they estimate 70 million to be our population. That's the estimate. And remember this too, over the next 20 years, emigration is going to double. Those are the estimates. Those are the forecasts.
Estimates,
which
forecasts.
Also
yeah, we love those. They're always wrong.
Been validated by the budget of responsibility.
The Office of Budget Responsibility, it's called, Ivon.
Look, these are figures done by experts.
No, they're figures done by government experts, which is not quite the same thing. You know that as well as I do. You've been just as critical of government figures when you feel like it, when you need to be. And I know that because I've talked to you about this before. But thank you very much indeed for giving me a lesson in common sense. I'm not sure you've won that one. We'll have you back again soon. Ivon Sampson there, Rafe Hadel-Mayku, thank you very much indeed for your input as well. All I can tell you is this. There's going to be an awful lot more people living here now than there were in the 1950s. There's an awful lot more people that are going to be living here 20 years from now than there are now. And that tells me that we're heading for trouble. It's as simple as that. You're watching the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. Coming up, serious criminals will finally be handed whole life orders under a proposed new bill. We'll hear an exclusive interview with the family of Zara Alina, who was tragically murdered last year. And a paramedic is begging Just Stop Oil to stop blocking ambulances. What do those idiots have to say for themselves? That's coming next.
We're here! Good morning, everybody.
Hope you're well. Thanks for joining us.
You're watching the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on TalkTV.
Welcome to Friday Night with Nadine.
Here on Primetime, we like to speak to the business people behind big moments.
Good evening, I'm Piers Morgan, uncensored in New York City.
Very impressive, well played.
I'm 3 days into the job. What have I done wrong?
Yeah. And your face just stared out at me.
Me and you conquer time.
Who wins?
You. Do you know what I love about Talk Today? We do it all. Sunak, Suella, scones.
Are you actually speech rating for Rishi Sunak?
I'm so rich. Frankly, I'm going to take the side of boozed up Brits against these pompous
What, do you mean you're not going to support Mayor Jose Luis
I am not.
Stop pandying to the NIMBYs, to the naysayers and the National Society for the Preservation of the Habitat of the Lesser Spotted Newt.
The problem lies in the bureaucracy.
It's almost like those highly paid consultants don't really know what they're doing.
The first thing they teach you in weather school is never confuse dog walkers with doggers.
Twitter, you sons of Can you please reinstate my account?
Yeah,
thank you.
There's a threat that you'd be worried about.
So are you saying that you're being overwhelmed, that you're inundated? We are really working hard for you. We're just asking patients to be patient with us. Are we only going to be trusting sources like Meta and Google and Facebook and X, formerly known as Twitter? Where is our unbiased news going to come from?
Welcome to the talk. It's really great to be back. My little darlings. Kids think all they have to do is stay at home, be silly, take pictures of everything.
Just shut down TikTok then, yeah? Problem solved.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
There you go.
Who's fit as a butcher's dog?
Him.
Oh, right. But he's now middle class.
Three of us here, Tess.
I nearly have empathy when I'm speaking to them. I know now, you're probably going to boot me off the short saying this now.
Kevin O'Sullivan is the worst presenter on Talk TV, sitting on his fat arse talking for a living.
Got former PMs all over the joint saying things the last few days. We have indeed, yeah.
Great first show. You having fun?
Oh, a ton of fun.
Yeah.
King Piers and King Cube.
I think it's only room for one king, man. You know what I'm saying?
Just because they're skin folk don't mean they're kin folk.
When I say I am God, you think I'm joking or not?
You tell me.
I'm not joking.
I'd rather do it on camera.
No. If it's on camera, we're not doing the interview.
Why?
We'll explain why.
How do you feel about that influence that you have?
You better be careful. We're coming for your children there, buddy.
About my resignation, yes, I'm going to do.
You're going to resign?
Yeah, I'm going.
I've been answering your question. You answer mine.
It's actually not my job to answer your questions.
Thank God for Talk TV. It's not only the home of common sense, it's the only place where you get the truth.
This is Talk TV.
Welcome back. You're watching the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. The Art of Murder trainee solicitor Zara Alina has welcomed new plans for sentencing reforms laid out in the King's speech. Yesterday, in an exclusive interview with Talk TV, the proposed sentencing bill would see judges hand out tougher sentences for serious criminals after Zara's murderer won an appeal to have his minimum jail term reduced. Here's Farah Naz speaking to Talk TV.
We applaud that change. It has been a long time coming. There have been people before us who've been campaigning for this change for many years. So it's a welcome step. We hope that it's implemented in a sustainable manner and that we don't return to, it was a comment that I heard earlier, for sentencing to wait a year before somebody agrees to come into the dock. That isn't what we should be going towards, because that also hurts victims.
I'm now joined by barrister and co-founder of the Fair Cop Group, Sarah Phillimore. Sarah, very good evening to you. Thanks very much for joining us on the new primetime Independent Republic of Mike Graham. One of the things that really bothered me about the reduction in the minimum sentence for the killer of Zara Alina was that one of the reasons given was that the harm that he could have somehow brought to his victim was lessened by the fact that she was unconscious quite quickly after the attack started, so that some of the injuries and some of the beating that he sort of brought to her wasn't somehow felt by her because she was unconscious. I mean, I found that an extraordinary sort of legal decision to come to.
Ooh, a chill went down my spine when you said that.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's appalling. It does make me ashamed of our criminal justice system that argument can be made and sustained. I mean, he tracked women that night. I think Zara was the fourth woman he approached. I mean, he could have killed many more. But I think the more worrying thing about this case is he killed her 9 days after he'd been released on licence from prison. He was wrongly assessed by the probation service as a medium risk. And the inquiry that followed, the probation service were clear they just lacked the staff in order to carry out proper risk assessments.
Yeah.
So there's fundamentally something very, very wrong. I think even worse than trying to categorise his crime as less serious because he knocked her out quickly. I mean, I don't know how they can conclude that. She was discovered still alive and died shortly afterwards, but it was a 9 minutes of sustained beating.
Yeah.
Frankly, I don't care if she was conscious or not.
Well, surely
that he was wrongly assessed.
it shouldn't be an issue, Sarah, should it? I mean, it's not for the parole board to make those kind of medical judgments. But also, this week we've seen the rows around Jamie Bolger's killer, John Venables, having a parole hearing, and various people, including the family, wanting to take part and be there, have been told they can't be, including the Times newspaper, who thought they should be there to see it, and apparently that invades his privacy. But I don't understand how parole boards week after week seem to make these mistakes. They seem to think that John Venables, who has been given parole twice and recalled twice because of his behaviour, which worries people about some of his paedophile tendencies, that he's now getting a third opportunity to be released. What on earth are they thinking?
Well, I think there's a clear distinction between what's happening with Venables and what was happening with McSweeney. I do think it's absolutely horrific to say that McSweeney should get time off because she may have lost consciousness. That's just, we've agreed on that. But Venables, I do think, is a very vulnerable individual. He was a child when he murdered another child. We've got to be careful, I think, not to turn the criminal justice system into a spectator sport. We don't have public hangings anymore. I can see a legitimate argument for having that kind of hearing in private, because it's not just about coddling a murderer. It's about giving some due recognition to his state of mind, which I think is very vulnerable. There's a big difference, I think, between what you've just discussed about McSweeney and what we're saying about Venables.
No, absolutely. But what it feeds to me into is the sense, as you say, that our criminal justice system is in a kind of crisis, because I'm not so concerned about whether he has the hearing in private or not. I'm more concerned he's having the hearing at all, given what's happened in the past. I mean, you could make all sorts of arguments about McSweeney and why he should not be paroled and why he should go to jail without parole, in the same way that you can make them about Venables. But if you grant parole to somebody, surely if they then breach their licence, not once but twice, you don't give them a third opportunity, do you?
I think that's a very fair point. It goes back to what I said about why McSweeney was wrongly risk assessed. We've got to have confidence that these risk assessments are being carried out properly and that people have the time and the resources and the qualified staff to do it. So that actually is a good argument for a public hearing, to allow the public some faith and confidence that this is being done properly. Because as you say, this will be his third attempt at parole after being recalled, I think, for offences involving child sex abuse images. So it's not great. And the public do need to feel that they have confidence. It's a difficult balance, though, I'd say, with somebody who is definitely as vulnerable as Venables seems to be. We can't turn it into the equivalent of bear baiting or a spectator sport.
Yeah,
but no, I'd agree with you. I think there needs to be some transparency and confidence.
Absolutely. And if somebody is, as you say, vulnerable, although I'm not sure many people would want to use that description solely, then don't let him out. You know, if he's vulnerable, then clearly there's a problem if you let him out, because he's then likely to get himself into trouble or indeed be identified or worse.
I don't disagree, but I think there's something really poignant and sad when children kill other children, because it's, you know, what was going on in his life? How did he get there? Was he born or was he made? There's all sorts of questions that swirl about. And that does suggest to me that we do need to try and strike a balance between satiating victims, you know, need for vengeance and for justice to be seen to be done. But no, I think there is something very worrying, and I would want to be reassured that this decision to release him, if that's what's made, is on a proper risk-assessed basis.
Yeah, and I think any risk assessment that I would do, obviously I'm not in charge, would suggest not to release him. Finally, let's just finish up with Just Stop Oil. Another 40 of them arrested today. The police seem to be a bit confused about what they can do with these characters. 1 minute they don't want to arrest them, 1 minute they do. What's going on?
Well, I think it just goes back exactly to the question of resources we're just talking about. I mean, apparently there were 60 protesters going limp. I mean, how many police officers do you need to deal effectively with that? I think the problem is we're sending the police to deal with protests, campaignings, activists, and they don't have the sufficient numbers to do it safely and effectively. And that's my worry. And I don't know how many police officers were deployed, but I imagine you need at least... So I can see 3 on the video carrying 1 man. So say you need at least 3 officers to deal safely with 1 protester. I just don't think the police have got the capacity to deal with these. I mean, we've seen with the marches and the campaigns for Palestine, there's no way the police can contain that if things get ugly. And I just worry that we are sending the police out ill-equipped and in insufficient numbers to actually police effectively.
I mean, it might as well call for it, the march to be banned, perhaps, but we haven't got time to discuss that, Sarah. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Sarah Phillimore there, a barrister, of course, and somebody involved with that Fair Cop group, which has been doing some brilliant work around people getting arrested for saying hurty words.